One of the things that excites me the most about photography is the way that it makes me connect to the deepest mysteries of the universe, the mysteries of light and time, things that scientists have never really quite nailed down. Light and time, we just don't quite know what light is, particle or wave, exactly what it is. It's still just out of reach. And time, why is it that time keeps going forward? I mean, why doesn't it go backwards? And this whole concept of the arrow of time and how long time is and our perception of time and psychology of time, all these things are embedded in photography. And when you take a photograph, like if I'm taking a photograph of my nose here, light is bouncing off my nose, traveling through the lens, and it's going to be allowed through a little hole called the aperture. And for a certain amount of time, every photograph is not an instant. It's a certain amount of time, 1/100th of a second or a half a second. It's an amount of time. It's going to be allowed through the shutter to a sensor in the back of the camera. And I need to draw a couple things here so I can show you how this works and give you kind of a feel for how some of your settings are involved with light and time. Okay, so let's go ahead here. We're going to start with, need to get a paintbrush here, brush tool, there we go. And I'm going to draw my nose here. And I guess I'll give myself the rest of my body, or not my body, but at least my chin. I'll give myself a chin, and probably ought to give myself an eye because we're talking about photographies, and I have kind of greenish eyes. At least I like to think so anyway. Probably just gray as I get old. Like everything turns gray. Okay, anyway, here we go. So I'm going to get some light bouncing off of me. Of course, to make a photograph, you need light bouncing off of something. Bouncing off of the nose. And then we're going to draw a camera. And a camera, the word camera just means dark box. It comes from the same root of chambre, like a room. So a darkened room. It's just a box here. It's dark inside. And it has a lens for focusing the light, for sorting the light, so that the part of the sensor that gets the tip of my nose doesn't mix up with my chin and turn into a blurry image of chin nose or elbow eyebrow. You know, it's a light sorter. That's what the lens is. I'm just gonna draw my camera like this. Okay, so I got a lens here. Okay, now the part of the lens that I'm actually going to be talking about right now is the aperture, the size hole that the light passes through. So there's a little hole that opens up, and it can be set to different things. The aperture can be set to different things. I'm going to label that whole aperture. Okay. And in a separate video, I'm going to get into how those numbers work and so on. But let me just do that. There's the aperture. Okay, and then there's a shutter, and the shutter is a little device that opens and closes to let light in, and it can open and close at a certain speed. So it could be opening for 1/1000th of a second, or it could be opening for half a second or 10 seconds, whatever. So we're going to call that a shutter, and it opens and closes at a certain speed. So I'll just go ahead and write shutter speed because that's what we're really interested in, not just that it's a shutter, but it has a speed. And then finally, in the back of the camera, there's a sensor, and that sensor is, I'll draw that, I'll do another color in purple here, is what's going to record the light from my nose and make the picture. Now, in the past, that used to be a piece of plastic that would change. It had a chemical on it that would change, a silver compound that would change when light hit it, and that's how you made it a photograph. But with a digital camera, that sensor is now an electronic sensor. I'm just going to call that a sensor, and it has a particular sensitivity, and that sensitive, it's hard to write on a screen like this. You try it sometime. Okay, sensitivity. It's referred to as ISO. That's a international standard organization, but that's how you refer to it. So the sensitivity is just referred to as an ISO. Okay, so you can see now that to get the right amount of light into the camera to make a picture that's properly exposed, I can change things here. And if it's not enough light, I can make my hole bigger, or I can make my shutter speed longer, or I could make my sensitivity more sensitive, right? If it's too much light getting in, I can make my hull smaller. I could make my shutter speed faster, or I can make my sensitivity less sensitive. I can control how much light ultimately registers on this thing by adjusting these three items. And in a separate video, I'm going to explain how that works numerically and how those changes actually change the look of your picture. All right. I hope you enjoyed it. I love light and time. For real. Don't forget to pay attention to this as a mystery and a wonder and an enthusiasm and a joy, because it can get a little, difficult as you're playing with the numbers and playing with the buttons. But ultimately, what magic! You just push that shutter release and all of a sudden there's a picture on the back of your camera and you're like, whoa, I just did that. I just participated in the deepest mysteries of the universe.